They didn't just take down a fence, they tore through something that had been quietly holding my life together for years. And the worst part was the way they acted like it didn't matter, like I was just some guy in their way instead of the man who owned that land. I didn't yell at first, didn't threaten, didn't do anything dramatic. But by the time it was over, they ended up paying more than money, and I still think about whether I went too far or not far enough. I bought that land back in 2012, 31 acres of flat, dark, fertile soil out in western Illinois. About 40 minutes outside of town, most people only pass through on their way somewhere else. And if you've ever seen farmland that just stretches out under a big sky, you know the kind of place I'm talking about: quiet, honest land, the kind that doesn't ask much from you except patience. I wasn't a full-time farmer, never pretended to be, but I leased the ground out to a local guy named Curtis who rotated corn and soybeans depending on the season. And between that income and the way land appreciates if you don't mess it up, it felt like one of the smartest decisions I ever made, something steady, something future-proof, maybe even where I'd build a house one day when I got tired of the noise of everything else. The property came with a perimeter fence already in place, for strands of barbed wire, weathered wooden posts set deep and straight, running just under a mile around the edges. And along the north boundary, there was this extra detail that always gave me peace of mind. The fence sat about 2 feet inside my property line, not right on it. And that buffer mattered because the land beyond it belonged to an older cattle rancher named Leonard Briggs, a man who'd been running livestock longer than I'd been alive. His cows grazed slow and heavy across those 60 acres, and every now and then you'd see them drift near the fence line, sniffing, testing, but they never crossed. That fence held. Leonard and I didn't talk much, just the occasional nod or short conversation when we crossed paths. But there was an understanding there, the kind rural folks don't need to spell out. Respect the land, respect the line, don't cause problems where there aren't any. And for years, that's exactly how it went. No issues, no disputes, just seasons changing and crops growing and the quiet rhythm of things working the way they should. Then Leonard passed. I remember hearing about it from Curtis one afternoon while we were standing near the south field, wind pushing through the corn rows, and there was this pause after he said it, like even the land felt the shift, because when a man like that goes, it's not just a person leaving, it's a whole way of doing things. A few months later, a sign went up on that northern property, big whiteboard, bold letters, and that's when I first saw the name Redwood Land Group, some development outfit based out of St. Louis. And right then, I had this quiet feeling in my gut. Not panic, not anger, just a sense that things were about to get complicated. Still, I didn't jump to conclusions. People sell land, developers build houses, that's just how it goes. Maybe they'd put in a few homes, keep things clean, stay within their lines. No reason it had to turn into a problem. About 2 weeks after that sign went up, a guy drove out to my property in a clean white pickup, stepped out like he owned the horizon, and introduced himself as Kyle Mercer, project manager for Redwood. Late 30s maybe, neat haircut, firm handshake, that kind of polished confidence you see in people who are used to getting their way without having to raise their voice. He told me they were planning to divide the 60 acres into 5-acre residential lots, country living with modern access, I think is how he phrased it. And he made a point to say they respected all property boundaries, that everything would be done by the book. I remember watching him as he talked, the way his eyes kept drifting past me toward the open land, like he wasn't really seeing what was there, just what it could become. And I told him, plain and simple, as long as you stay on your side, we won't have any issues. He smiled, nodded, said, that's exactly how we like to operate. And for a while, that seemed true. Nothing happened for months. The land sat quiet. No heavy equipment, no crews, just the same wind, the same crops, the same fence holding the line like it always had. I almost forgot about the whole thing. Then one morning, early summer, I got a call from Curtis, and I could tell something was wrong before he even finished the first sentence. His voice had that tight edge to it, the kind farmers get when something's gone sideways out in the field. Hey, he said, barely pausing, you need to get out here. Now, I asked him what was going on, and there was this beat. Then he said, they tore your fence down. At first I thought I misheard him. I actually laughed, just a short, confused breath, because it didn't make sense. Nobody just tears down a boundary fence, not without talking, not without warning. What do you mean, tore it down? I asked. 300 feet of it's gone, he said. Posts pulled, wire rolled up and dumped. And they're cutting a road straight through. That's when the feeling hit. Not anger yet, not even disbelief. Just this cold, steady drop in my stomach, like something had shifted in a way that wasn't going to shift back. I grabbed my keys, didn't even finish my coffee, and started driving out there. And the whole way I kept thinking the same thing over and over. There had to be some explanation, some mistake, some crossed line that could be straightened out with a conversation. But when I got there, I saw it. And there was no mistake. There's a kind of silence that hits you when something's been done wrong right in front of you. Not loud, not dramatic. Just this hollow quiet where your brain is trying to catch up with what your eyes are already telling you. And that's exactly what it felt like standing there, looking at that gap in my fence like someone had taken a bite out of my land. 300 feet, maybe a little more, completely gone. Posts yanked clean out of the ground, some of them splintered, others tossed into a pile like trash, and the wire, the same wire that had held that line for years, rolled up loose and dumped on my side like it didn't belong to anyone anymore. And right where that fence used to stand, there was a road. Fresh dirt, graded smooth, wide enough for trucks and equipment, cutting straight across the northern edge of my property and into theirs, like the line between us had never existed in the first place. You could still see the tire tracks, deep and heavy, pressed into soil that hadn't been touched like that in years, and standing there, I remember thinking, they didn't just remove the fence, they erased it. Curtis walked up beside me, hands on his hips, shaking his head slow. I told them. He muttered, more to himself than to me. I told the guys working here that wasn't their land. You talked to anyone in charge? I asked, still staring at that road. Foreman just shrugged, he said. Said they had orders. Orders. That word stuck with me, because it meant this wasn't some accident, not some crew making a bad call in the moment. Someone told them to do this. Someone signed off on it. I pulled out my phone and called Kyle right there, didn't even step away, didn't calm down first, just hit his number and waited. He picked up on the third ring, voice easy, almost casual. Hey, this is Kyle. What the hell did you do to my fence? I said, and I didn't raise my voice, not yet, but there was enough in my tone that he knew exactly what I was talking about. There was a pause, not long, just enough. Then he said, oh, that. Yeah, we had to take a section down to get access for the road. It was in the way. In the way. I actually closed my eyes for a second when he said that, because there it was, not even an apology, not even a heads up, just a flat explanation like we were talking about moving a lawn chair. That fence is on my property, I said. You don't just take it down. We're putting it back, he replied, a little sharper now. It's temporary. We've got a schedule to keep. How temporary? Couple weeks. Maybe a month. I let that sit for a second, looking out at that open stretch where anything could wander in, deer, cattle, God knows what else. And all I could picture was Curtis's crops getting trampled, rows flattened overnight, because someone decided my fence was inconvenient. That's not acceptable, I said. You should have called me before you touched anything. We don't need permission to manage access on an active development. He shot back, and now the tone was changing, losing that polished edge. We're not trying to cause problems here. No, I said, finally letting a little edge into my voice. You already did. There was a beat. Then he sighed, like I was the difficult one in this situation. Look, we'll fix it. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. And then he hung up. Just like that. I stood there with the phone still in my hand, staring at that road. And that's when the anger finally settled in. Not explosive, not loud, just this steady, deliberate kind that doesn't burn out quickly. The kind that starts thinking instead of reacting. Curtis glanced at me. What now? I took a breath, slow, and said, now we do this the right way. That's when I called my attorney, Rachel Bennett. She'd been practicing property and agricultural law longer than I'd owned that land. And if there was anyone who understood how serious something like this was, it was her. When I explained what happened, she didn't interrupt, didn't jump to conclusions, just listened. And when I sent her the photos, the survey documents, everything I had, there was another one of those pauses. Then she said, calm as ever, they crossed a line they can't uncross. I drove into town to meet her that afternoon, and sitting across from her in that office, going over everything piece by piece, it started to feel less like frustration and more like a case. She pointed to the survey map, tapping right where that fence had been. This is clearly within your boundary, she said. 2 feet inside, actually. That's not even a gray area. So what are my options? I asked. She leaned back slightly, folding her hands. First, we give them a chance to correct it. Formal notice. 5 days. And if they don't? Her expression didn't change, but there was something sharper behind it now. Then we stop asking. That same evening, she drafted a letter to Redwood, precise, direct, no wasted words, outlining the damage, citing the law, demanding they restore the fence within 5 days or face legal action. Not eventually, not when convenient, 5 days. We sent it certified, and then we waited. Day 1 passed. Nothing. Day 2, still nothing. By day 3, Curtis called again, not angry this time, just concerned. I saw tracks near the north end, he said. Something's already been moving through. That tightened something in my chest, because this wasn't theoretical anymore. This was exactly what I warned about. On the 4th day, we finally got a response, not from Kyle, but from Redwood's legal team. Clean letterhead, carefully worded, and every sentence felt like it had been polished just enough to sound reasonable without actually giving anything up. They acknowledged the fence removal, called it necessary for construction access, and assured us it would be replaced in due course as development progresses. In due course. I remember reading that line twice, then looking up at Rachel, and she gave this small, knowing smile. That's not a timeline, she said. That's a stall. So they're not fixing it, I said. Not unless they have to. There was a moment there, a quiet one, where I could have backed off, waited it out, trusted that maybe they'd follow through eventually. It would have been easier, less confrontational, less risky. But then I thought about that road, about the way Kyle said it was in the way, about the crops, the land, the line that had been respected for years until someone decided it didn't matter anymore. And I realized something simple. If I let this slide, it wouldn't stop here. I looked back at Rachel and said, so what happens if I fix it myself? She didn't hesitate. State law allows you to repair damaged boundary fencing and recover the cost from the responsible party. And if they refuse to pay? Her smile came back, just a little sharper this time. Then we make them. That was it. That was the moment things shifted from reaction to decision. I didn't call Kyle again. I didn't argue, didn't send another warning. Instead, I called a guy named Daniel Hayes, local contractor, been building farm fences for over 25 years, the kind of guy who doesn't advertise because everyone already knows his name. When I explained what happened, he let out a low whistle. They just took it down, he said. Didn't even ask. There was a pause. Then he said, all right, let's build it right. He came out the next morning, walked the line with me, measured everything twice, checked the soil, the spacing, all of it. And when he gave me the quote, it was straightforward, $4,500, give or take, for treated posts set in concrete, spaced tight, with high-tensile barbed wire that would outlast the original by a long shot. Stronger than what you had, he said. I nodded. Good. He looked at me for a second, then added, you sure you want to go this route? I glanced out at that open stretch again, at the road cutting through like it belonged there. Yeah, I said quietly. I'm sure. And just like that, we started building. They started early the next morning, before the heat really set in, before the wind picked up, just that low hum of a diesel auger biting into the ground where the old posts had been ripped out like they meant nothing. And I stood there with a cup of coffee gone cold in my hand watching Daniel and his crew work like they were putting something back the way it was supposed to be all along. Except this time, it wasn't just about replacing a fence. It was about drawing a line that wasn't going to be ignored again. They set the posts deeper than before, 10 feet apart, each one anchored in concrete, straight as a ruler, no lean, no guesswork. And when they ran the wire, it was tighter, stronger, high-tensile steel that sang just a little when the wind brushed against it. And I remember Daniel stepping back at one point, hands on his hips, looking down the line and saying, that'll hold longer than we will. 2 days, that's all it took. 2 days to undo what someone else had decided didn't matter. When they finished, I walked the length of it myself, slow, deliberate, checking each post, each strand, running my hand along the wire like I needed to feel that it was real again. And for the first time since all this started, that tight feeling in my chest eased just a little. But I knew this wasn't over. That afternoon, Rachel sent the invoice. $4,500 for the fence, detailed, documented, backed up with market comparisons, labor breakdowns, everything you'd need if someone decided to argue it wasn't fair, and attached to it was a letter, short and precise, stating clearly that Redwood was legally responsible for the full cost and expected to remit payment promptly. We didn't have to wait long. Kyle called me that same evening. He didn't open with hello, didn't ask how I was, just came in hot, voice tight with that kind of anger people get when something doesn't go their way for the first time in a while. "You seriously went ahead and rebuilt it?" he said. "Yeah," I replied, calm, almost too calm. "I did." "That's ridiculous," he snapped. "We told you we were going to handle it." "No," I said. "You told me eventually." "That's not the same thing." There was a sharp exhale on the other end, like he was trying to keep control of the conversation. "And $4,500? You expect us to pay that?" "It's already done," I said. "And yes, I do. We could have done it for half that if you'd waited," he shot back. I couldn't help it. I actually smiled a little, standing there looking out at that fence. "You had the chance to do it right the first time," I said. "You chose not to." That didn't sit well with him. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Heavy, stretched thin. "This isn't over," he said finally. "I know," I replied. "That's why I documented everything." He hung up after that. And from that point on, it wasn't a conversation anymore, it was a case. Their attorneys came back first, just like before, polished language, careful phrasing, arguing that the cost was excessive, that I acted prematurely, that the removal had been temporary and necessary for development access. All the same points, just dressed up a little better. Rachel answered every one of them, line by line, with photos, with timelines, with the survey, with expert statements on fair market pricing for agricultural fencing in our area. There wasn't a single gap left for them to slip through. So they pushed it to court. I remember the morning of the hearing, sitting in that courtroom, not nervous exactly, but aware that this had gone further than it ever needed to, all because someone decided a fence was in the way. Kyle was there too, sitting a few rows ahead, suit on this time, looking smaller somehow than he did out on the land, like the room didn't belong to him the way he was used to. When the case was called, Rachel stood, steady as ever, and laid everything out, the ownership, the boundary, the destruction, the timeline, the lack of consent, the risk to active farmland. No theatrics, no exaggeration, just facts stacked clean and solid. Their attorney followed, trying to reframe it, calling it a temporary inconvenience, emphasizing their intention to replace the fence, suggesting that I escalated unnecessarily. And for a moment, I could see what they were trying to do, soften it, blur it, make it sound smaller than it was. Then the judge leaned forward. He looked at their attorney and asked one simple question. "When exactly were you planning to replace the fence?" There was a pause, the kind that feels longer than it is. "Within 60 days, the attorney said. 60 days. I didn't react, didn't look over, just kept my eyes forward, but I felt it, that shift in the room. The judge raised an eyebrow slightly. "So you removed a boundary fence, without permission, on land you do not own, and intended to leave it down for up to 2 months. Their attorney tried to respond, started to explain the construction schedule, access needs, all of it, but it didn't land the same anymore. Because now it sounded exactly like what it was. The judge nodded once, then turned slightly, glancing at Rachel's documentation, the photos, the invoice. "The property owner had every right to mitigate the damage and protect his land," he said, "including restoring the fence at a reasonable market cost." And just like that, it was done. Redwood was ordered to pay the full $4,500 for the fence, plus $3,900 in legal fees. And before moving on, the judge added one more thing, almost casually, but it stuck with me more than anything else he said. "If the replacement fence is of higher quality than the original," he noted, "that is a consequence of the defendant's actions, not the plaintiff's responsibility." That was it. No drama, no drawn-out battle, just a clean decision. They paid within a few weeks. No apology, no follow-up, nothing, just a check and silence. And you'd think that would be the end of it, clean, resolved, line redrawn, and respected again. But here's the part one still go back and forth on. Because every time I drive out there now, every time I see that fence standing straighter, stronger than before, every time I notice how the road they cut stops right at that line now, like it finally understands where it's not allowed to go, I feel a certain kind of satisfaction, sure. But there's something else too. A question, maybe. Did they learn anything from it? Or did they just pay the price and move on to the next piece of land where nobody pushes back? And I guess that's what I keep thinking about, not the money, not even the fence, but how often this kind of thing happens when people assume they can take a little, move a line, cut a corner, and nobody's going to stop them. So I'll leave it there, and I'm curious what you think. If you were in my place, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have waited it out and avoided the fight altogether? And more importantly, where do you draw the line between being reasonable and being taken advantage of? Let me know in the comments, because I've heard arguments both ways, and honestly, I'm still not sure everyone would agree with how I handled it.